A History of Southern Missouri and Northern Arkansas by William Monks, published in 1907. Incidents of 1863. In the fall of 1863, Colonel Livingston, who was acting in the capacity of Brigadier General, was ordered to proceed to Batesville, Arkansas, and there erect a post. The author was transferred by order of the government and made chief of scouts, receiving captain's pay and ordered to move with the command of Colonel Livingston and be under his command and control until further orders. On or about December 15, 1863, Colonel Livingston, who was colonel of the 1st Nebraska Regiment and the 11th Missouri Cavalry Regiment, broke camp at Rolla and marched in the direction of Batesville, Arkansas. Colonel Livingston, on leaving Rolla, issued a general order and spent the same in all directions, that all rebels or bushwhackers who were captured wearing Federal uniform would be court-martialed and shot, or all persons who were captured in robbing or plundering houses would be court-martialed and shot. On our arrival at West Plains, the advance of the command captured 3 Confederates dressed in Federal uniforms near what was known as the Johnson Farm. One of them broke from custody and escaped. The other 2 were court-martialed and shot, while the command was camped at West Plains. After those men were shot, some of the Confederates dressed in Federal uniforms came inside the Federal lines while in camp at West Plains just after dark and took 9 black cavalry horses from the line and made their escape. The soldiers saw them take the horses but thought it was their own men taking them to water. The command, breaking camp at West Plains, marched in the direction of Batesville, passed through Salem, Arkansas, and on Big Strawberry encountered the rebels and had quite an engagement. The weather was quite cold. I remember that after the fighting ceased, some of the soldiers had been fighting with their revolvers, and their hands had become so benumbed that they had lost the use of their fingers and couldn't return their revolvers to their scabbards, and the revolvers had to be taken from their hands. The hands of some of them were badly frostbitten. The command again renewed its march for Batesville. Small bands of bushwhackers and rebels kept up a continuous fire every day on the advance and committed depredations by pillaging, claiming they were Federal forces, most of them being dressed in Federal uniforms. The pillaging grew so annoying that Colonel Livingston, just before breaking camp, divided the advance into 2 columns, marching from a mile to 2.5 miles apart. Late in the afternoon, one wing came onto a number of those irregular Confederates or bushwhackers, robbing the house of a Union woman whose husband was in the Federal Army. Nearly all of them were dressed in Federal uniforms, claiming to the woman to be Federal soldiers. They had all dismounted and gone into the house to plunder it, except their captain, Elliott, whom they had left on guard. The road came around in a short bend and concealed the approach of the Federals until they were within 100 yards of the house. There was a large gate in front of the house. The woman was standing in the yard about 10 steps from the gate. She saw the troops coming before they were discovered by the captain, and supposed them to be of the same command. They were all cavalry. As soon as they saw the captain, they put spurs to their horses and with revolvers in hand charged upon them. The captain gave the alarm and fled as rapidly as possible on horseback, as part of the Federals in hot pursuit after him. Every avenue of escape was cut off from those who were in the house, and they were forced to retreat through a 10-acre open field before they could reach the timber. The woman of the house, seeing them flee, knew at once that they didn't belong to the same command. While the Federals were approaching the gate at full speed, she ran to it and threw it open, so that they would not be checked in their pursuit. They overtook them about 2/3 of the way across the field as the rebels were cut off from their horses and were on foot. 3 of the rebels were killed and 3 taken prisoners. They had everything in their possession, bedclothing, domestic, knives and forks, and even axes that they had been taken from Confederates as well as from Unionists. Also a number of women's dresses. All of the dresses were given to the woman whose house they were robbing at the time of their capture. The soldiers had a fine time after they reached camp by turning the domestic into new towels. Just after supper, the author was notified to appear at the provost marshal's office to see whether or not he could identify the prisoners. On his appearing and entering into conversation with the prisoners and inquiring their names, one claimed to be named Smith, another Taylor, and the other Johnson. One of them lisped a little when talking. The author soon recognized one of them and said to him, "Your name is not Smith. You had just as well give your proper name, for I know you." The provost marshal asked him if he knew the author. He hesitated to answer. On the provost marshal urging him to answer, he said, "I ought to know him, as he was one of my near neighbors when the war commenced. My name is Calvin Hawkins." The author replied, "That is correct," and turning to the other prisoner for a second look, recognized him. He remarked, "Taylor is not your proper name." The provost marshal asked him if he knew the author. He hesitatingly replied that he did. His proper name was then demanded, which he gave as Jacob Bridges. The other was a boy named Hankins, 13 years of age.